Thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings, Sarah. How are you? Where are
I'm
you
so
on this side of the world? Are you here in the States? Are you in Costa Rica?
No, I am here in the States visiting family for a week. I'm in upstate New York in Rochester.
Awesome. Well, I want to introduce our very next speaker, Miss Sara Wu. I actually recently connected with Sara this year. I believe it was this year, right? And
Yeah.
Sara invited me to teach out in Costa Rica and to teach herbalism there at the Envision Festival, which was an experience, let me tell you. It was an interesting experience. That was my first time actually in Costa Rica, and just being in an environment where people just want to connect, people want to connect and want to just get back to self. And it was such an interesting experience teaching in another country, teaching herbalism. And I also got a chance to sample some of Sara's amazing knowledge on regenerative herbalism. And I went back on her page and took a deep dive in her courses and found out that she's a regenerative herbalism expert. She teaches all things about growing herbs and permaculture and herbalism. And, she's a proud witchy girl too, which I love as well. So I'm going to go ahead and segue it to Miss Sara Wu, who is going to teach the next session on regenerative herbalism. So I have to make you a host to screen share.
Great. Hi, everyone. I just want to say welcome. Thank you so much for supporting this event and all of the wellness practitioners, herbalists, healers that get to participate in this. And also thank you, Abriel, so much for just creating this opportunity for us all, for all of you watching, and for all of the teachers here for helping us to create just right livelihood, and as well as having a platform to share. So thank you so much. Am I ready to go? Great. So hi, everyone. My name is Sara Wu, and I am your friendly village witch. And today I will be sharing with you about regenerative herbalism. So this is let me go ahead and share my screen. Regenerative herbalism is kind of a newer term, I'll say. It's stemming from what is called, stemming from what is called permaculture. Where are we here? Sorry. So permaculture is a design philosophy that was coined in the 1960s during a lot of the social revolutions that were happening globally. I'm not going to get super deep into the history of permaculture right now. It is a long history and an interesting one, especially looking at the context of the times, looking at who and how things were opened up for permaculture. And we're going to see a lot of critique in the permaculture community, specifically just with some of the very cisgendered white man power dynamics that were so prevalent throughout our community for many decades. And we can read and get more into those histories another time. But what I want to tell you for this 35 minutes that we're together is the kind of basic of what permaculture is that and I wrote out this whole thing here, this is permaculture from my lens, but permaculture deeply is the opposite of the belief system that the world is a machine. And this is what imperialism, colonialism, and capitalism has done to us, is told us that we human beings, the planet, the soil, the water, the animals, the fungi, the air, everything is just a reservoir of resources for humans to consume. And this extraction and very exploitive way of looking at life is the opposite of deep ecology. This is the opposite of what permaculture is, because permaculture deeply is studying the relationship between organisms, and that includes us human beings in relationship with each other, in relationship with the land, and we're looking to mutually beneficial relationships in particular. And what I also love about permaculture is it is also, for me, a great tool of empowerment, specifically in that it's nurturing in us to be very active participants in our lives. It's not allowing us to be bystanders. It's not allowing us to fall deep into victim mentality, because it's just such a tool for empowerment. It allows us to get back to the land. And that's what I love about it so much. And so I've been studying herbalism and working with herbalism much longer than permaculture. I've been practicing permaculture now for about 14 years and herbalism for 23. And for me, I started to see just so many intersections on how they interrelate with each other, specifically through this whole system perspective. So what I'm going to share with you in this is in this time we have together is our basic ethics of permaculture. And then we're going to look at how these concepts apply to our healing practices as well as to our social structures, because this is so much of where permaculture is evolving into, is from land-based human settlement design into one that's like fully enveloping everything that it is to be human beings in relationship to each other. And permaculture was inspired, of course, by indigenous wisdom from the land, and looking at how detached human beings have become in such a variety of ways. And for me, this is also why herbalism is so important, because herbalism helps us to re-find our indigenous soul, especially for those of us who come from very mixed backgrounds, people who have been dispersed around the world, whether by their own choice or not. People have been detached from who they are. And so it's so important for us to find our way back. And I feel like these regenerative philosophies are giving modern humans a language and a way to try to find our way back now that we are this incredibly huge globalized society. Something I put in here, which I feel is really important with permaculture and philosophies, as well as just the realities of our modern times, is to remember that the suffering of one is the suffering of many. And it's through this nurturing of empathy and compassion that we are going to find our way back into this beautiful interwoven tapestry that humans are with the land and with the world. So some of the big differences that we have here are between the words sustainable and regenerative. And you're going to see that I don't use the word sustainable in an inappropriate context. I really tend towards regenerative, because sustainability is the result of regeneration, and regeneration can take decades, it can take entire generations to come back. And this is where we're at right now. We're in a regenerative process of finding again our voices, of finding again our relationship with the land, of finding our relationship with our plants, with our foods, with our communities. And then we're using the word sustainable. Essentially, this is a green washed marketing capitalist word that's come into us to say that it's okay to keep doing the bare minimum to get by. It's okay to keep buying recycled plastic, even though now we know it's not even being recycled, because it's just going to go right back into the system. The fact is, we're still extracting from the planet. So when we're looking at sustainability and regeneration, we want to focus more on regeneration, because that's where we are. We've done so much damage to human beings and to ecosystems, to all of our relations, that we are in a process of remending this right now. And it's going to take many generations. And I think that's what's so important to remember, is that this beautiful world that we know is possible, it might not be here in our lifetimes, but it doesn't mean that we don't we have to keep going, for this to happen. Because as we do our ancestral work, we're also doing our descendant work, and we're helping these people yet to come, and these ecosystems yet to come, and these communities yet to come, to live in a world that we really dream to see. And so I do really feel that these philosophies are really important tools for working with ecosystems, communities, food, medicine, and they really help us to, permaculture and the concepts of regeneration really help us to remake the world that we want to see, because this is where we're at now. And this is what, many of us have participated in creating, or the people that we come from participated in creating. So here we are now. So we're going to look to the four core ethics of permaculture. And there's 12 principles, and there's a lot of different teachings that come up from so many different practitioners. And at the end of this presentation, I just give a very few resources, but there's endless amounts of resources out there. And what's amazing is that permaculture is on every continent. It's in every, community, every bioregion around the world. You're going to find people practicing in different ways. And that's also what's really lovely about it, is permaculture is decentralized, While again, there is this kind of ugly power dynamic from the cis white gendered man, power structure that has let all of the books being published, for the most part, for the past many decades, that's been the focus. That's starting to shift now. But what we have again is our core ethics, and our core ethics in permaculture is our common vision, right? This is what informs our decisions and our actions, and also the consequences of those. So let's get into it. So we have earth care is our first ethic of permaculture. In earth care, we are looking to like this concept of deep ecology. And deep ecology is looking down to the roots. It's like we're not just uh, shallow, not social, shallow ecology, but shallow ecology would be recycling a plastic bottle. Deep ecology is looking at our reason why are we even having to drink plastic bottled water? Like, why isn't there clean, available water to everybody? And so through this lens, we want to be mindful of all living things. We're really considering our resources. And as herbalists, as wellness practitioners, we need to consider the right livelihood for every single living creature on the planet, and knowing that the plants have a destiny, that the mushrooms have a destiny, that the soil has the destiny to live out its life in the way that it can to its greatest potential. And so we want to be really mindful to not exploit our resources, and to be hyper mindful of where we're getting our herbs from, who are the humans that are involved, how are these plants being grown. And while we want to focus in, because where the most action is held and where we can feel the most empowered in these times where we probably feel very powerless, is to refocus in your bioregion, because that's the sphere of influence where you're going to have the most impact, is with the human beings that you're able to communicate with the plants that you're able to touch, with the soil that you're able to get your hands on, with the it's just, that is where our power comes from, is in our communities, while we are so aware of what our global impact is. So in earth care, of course we're working with land, we're with animals, with our plants, and we want to have the highest respect for all life and intentionality behind everything that we're doing, in ways that are going to help to perpetuate their lives and not exploit their lives further through the capitalistic models of extraction and exploitation that we've been dealing with for too many generations now. The next ethic is, these are all my students too. I want to show you here. This is beautiful Bobby. She's from Guatemala. This is Bianca, and we're doing some volcanic relief work from an explosion that happened in Guatemala many years ago. And herbalism, if you're into it, we can practice in acute care and in relief work, and it's really potent work as well to do that. So here, people care. This is where we're edging into social permaculture. And people care is specifically referring to our healthy social structuring. And what comes from social structuring? Obviously, it's schools that are speaking to the need of students, not just trying to blanket statement, how students should behave, how students should learn, how students should perform. We're talking about affordable and accessible housing, food, healthcare, and just really getting deep into like, what does the concept of right livelihood mean? It's like in our capitalistic models, you're supposed to say when you're a child, like, okay, now what do you want to be when you grow up? It's like, who do you want to, I don't know who the hell I want to be when I grow up. I want to be an artist when I'm 5. I don't want to say I want to go sit behind a desk and work for someone else to make exponentially more in a year than I'm going to make in potentially like 10 years or in 5 years or whatever, and so it's like this concept of right livelihood. It means that we're finding a lifestyle that is integrated perhaps with our profession, that's rewarding, that's healthy, that's connected, and that's just, like that's what right livelihood, it means. Like, it's not just the work that you got to do to look forward to retirement, but it's like really living the life you want to live right now. That is, as herbalists, you're all here because you're interested in herbal medicine. And so inherently we are in service. We are humans that are really have this deep empathic side to us, and this like highly sensitive side that really cares about the health and the well-being of others. And so, like what we're thinking about as we're in service to our families and communities is, how can we provide holistic preventative care? How can we be some of the first responders to the those in our communities that really need support, and helping people to also reconnect to the land and learn their plants, because so many humans, I believe, did know the plants that were in their bioregions. They knew the basic ones that were going to help with the common cold, with, menstrual cramps, with all these, skin conditions. And they would go to the community healer for the harder stuff. And so, like, one thing that I feel is really important in people care is bringing people back to the basic things that we all knew at one point, and future care. So these are sweet little girls here, and in Costa Rica where I live, and I teach a class about like the moon cycle with these little girls. And so when we're thinking of future care, we are of course looking to the past and we're looking to the future. And a part of the concept in permaculture is that we design beyond our borders. But I really believe that we also need to be designing beyond our generation and thinking, because that's why so much of why we're here is because people who are stuck in their generation were trying to maximize the output and maximize the income of their generation without the consideration of those to come. And I think that that's what's so important. And this is also what the forest models for us, as a metaphor and as like a literal system, is that when we plant trees, we are planting for the future, because we're most likely not going to be able to always eat from those trees, or we might have a short period of time where we do. So when we're thinking about, looking to the future, we are considering the edge of our abundance, and what does it mean for this to also, and abundance is many different things, from clean water to healthy soil to access to food and and medicine. And so helping that to move into other communities, moving just beyond this like capitalistic hoarding mentality that we've been holding onto for so long, and too long. And then Fair Share. So Fair Share here is my friend Jackie, and we work with a group of midwives also in Guatemala here. And so, Fair Share, we're speaking about these concepts of equality and equity, which are, different things. Like if we're going to get into some economic models, considering that Fair Share is, as you're working as an herbalist, if you do decide to move down that as a career path, you think, how do I create abundance for myself as well as for others? And so we create lots of different financial models. Like, for example, Abril here in this course or in this conference, she created like a really incredible opportunity for us herbalists to also create a livelihood for ourselves. And you can do this, through collaborative projects like this. We do it through sliding scale opportunities, through trade, through bartering, through working in many different ways. And so the need for a balance, when we're talking about, again, Fair Share, it's about the balanced distribution. So we look at like, what do people need, not just about like, we're not talking about communist or socialist, perhaps, philosophies of like equal distribution, but we're talking about equitable distribution based on ableness, based on age, all these things people need at different rates. And so making sure people's needs are met and that their essential rights are met as sentient beings. I really love also the concepts of and the participation in different forms of alternative economics. And alternative economics doesn't mean just, digressing away from, the dollar or whatever currency, but it's looking at how do we distribute these currencies different is really, really important, and not just that like some win and some lose based on, what is available to them because of the situations that they were born in. So I think this is really interesting. And this I learned from Permaqueer, which is a organization, I think they're based out of Australia, actually. And what they're doing is they're applying the succession of the forest to social models. And I think that this is really, really beautiful. So when we're looking at the succession of the forest, so if we start at the bottom, of the screen here, we're going to be looking at like the snags. Snags are those old trees. They're the dead trees standing. And those are so important for so many organisms, from birds to reptiles to insects to little mammals who are living within, and all the fungi as well that live within inside these dead trees. And when these dead trees come into their next phase of existence, what they're doing is they're opening up for new species to come through. And we call these the weeds. Sometimes they're called the pioneer species. These are the ones that come in with deep tap roots to break up soil, and they spread really fast, right? They've got a lot of greenery, they got a lot of seeds, and they're, just putting themselves everywhere. They're setting the stage for things like shrubs and pioneer trees, or smaller and short-lived trees to come in. And then what I added in here was looking at then this phase into like monocrops, right? So monocrops, specifically, I put that with the modern medicine system. But to go back for a minute, the snags are looking to our ancestral healers. These are the ones that held so much knowledge of the forest. These are the ones that held, the potential for all new life to come into being. And then, but what happened was those snags were removed. Those plants weren't allowed to go through this process to rejuvenate the soil. And so the soil became, if we're looking at this also as a metaphor, the soil became very compacted, damaged, eroded. And what takes place then are the pioneer species, or the weeds, right? And these are the plants that are very much opportunists. They're finding fresh ground to come into. And so we could maybe put in there in the social model through, the wellness lens, for example, we could see things like the colonial healers, the people who came in to these ecosystems and they removed those dead trees that were so important. Again, like the native peoples, the indigenous peoples, they removed all of that. And what was left was this damaged ecosystem. And so when these colonial healers came in, they just like spread throughout everywhere. And they did contain healing knowledge, right? What they brought with themselves, for example, from their cultures into these new ecosystems. And in particular, I did put in here plantain. This is Plantago major, which many of you might know as under where it says weed. And that one was referred to as the white man's footprint. This is the one, that plant that just kind of showed up everywhere that the white man went. And so then we've got the shrubs, or the pioneer trees. And these are, I consider, the allopathic doctors. And these are where those allopathic doctors, they were taking, what the colonial healers, or like some of those bush doctors were doing. And they took that and they synthesized it into, allopathic medicine, pharmaceutical medicine. They started to establish themselves. And through that establishing of themselves, then I put in the monocrops. And the monocrops here, I put the corn, which is this beautiful plant that was totally perverted by, modern farming practices. And I'm equating the monocrops with modern medical system, right? Like one size fits all. This is what's going to feed everybody. This is what's going to heal everybody. And then just, we're going to stamp it all through this one lens on how, you're supposed to operate in the world. I just saw a comment that said they thought that plantain was native. It's a naturalized species. It was introduced, but now it's become a part of our medicine. And what we have to remember is that plants have no borders. Plants aren't like humans. Plants move around the world in the bellies of animals and the feathers and the upper layers of the atmosphere. And so plants love us and they want to be with us. It's humans that really, shift their reality. So moving on from monocrops as modern medical system, then we start to get these naturalized species. And the naturalized species, I put in here echinacea, and I put in here Matricaria chamomile, right? So plants that a lot of people know that you're finding all over the world. One native, to the European continent, and one native to the Americas. And these are the modern herbalism. This was like herbalism being reborn. This was herbalism, in its renaissance coming back. And I looked to some of the modern herbalism elders. And what's interesting when we look at the pioneer species and we look at these naturalized species, or these modern herbalism elders and the colonial healers, is that there's a certain stage that was being set for those modern herbalism elders to be accepted into society. And when you look at who they were, who's writing the books, who's getting the airplay, who's getting the attention, right? Again, cisgendered white men and a handful of cisgendered white women. And so they start to set the stage for certain things to be accepted, right? We're looking at like, okay, this is how the times have been painted. And now it's like, okay, now you're going to get a book deal, or now you're going to get, again, the podcast or whatever it is. And so then organic farming, we're going to transition into, and organic farming became this whole boom, especially in the early 2000s. People were like super, super into it. Right. And like having that come into being, it's like now people want organic food, and that's great. But what happens is that organic farming is still a monocrop. Like just because it's organic doesn't mean that it's grown in an intermixed, healthy, polyculture resilient system. And so I equate the organic farming with the wellness influence movement. And the wellness influencer movement, again, who was getting the airplay, right? And specifically, I put up here a thunderstorm cloud with lightning and the sun, because natural events occur, right? And that lightning strike is that like wake the fuck up moment of what's going on, and like getting people to come into this realization of like, wait a minute, like we've got voices here, like we're becoming a majority here, like we need to diversify. Even though yes, this organic farming is beautiful, it's still a monocrop, and this needs to shift. And so we see then the resurgence of our native species. And what we see with the native species are those deep roots breaking through those compacted soils. We see, I put in here the American ginseng, and then this other deep tap rooted plant, really beautiful. These old lived endangered species and native species that all of a sudden people are starting to put a focus on and starting to want to nurture and bring back. And so these for me are the intersectional healers. It's people like me who have a very mixed background, who don't have this like really strong connection to where my people came from, because my people were pulled from all over the place. There's a lot of us out there like that that are like, I don't know who my roots are. And so we find our roots through the plants and the BIPOC healers, and people coming, again, the native species, people coming back together to bring it, into a cohesive ecosystem. And then what I really love is that the pollinating species, this is our queer community and everybody else within, that spectrum there, because they're the ones that are just bringing ideas and really different perspectives and new ways of thinking and spreading information everywhere. And then what we get finally through this, and this is, we're in this little window right now with that organic farming and that endangered species and the pollinators. And our goal is to become that old growth forest, because that old growth forest is highly diverse. It knows that the canopy trees are not the ultimate. They may be awe-inspiring, but we know that, the mycelial web below, and those little ferns and those little mosses and the lichens and the vines and every other creature is so integral to, the whole being strong and adaptive and resilient. And so this is our goal, is to come into this old growth forest, which is a holistic, biodiverse, bioregional healing tradition, because that's what we're bringing together, right? By sharing all of this knowledge, this conference, and through all the teachers and all of your friends and your community, right? Like, because we're a global society right now, and we can pull information and learn and come back to who we are and to who we're going to be moving forward through, this really beautiful diversity that we're going to have. And for me, along with the forest, is I really love the model of, or excuse me, the metaphor of a tapestry. And so imagine that every intersection that we find, because remember that the conventional society wants to pull people apart. They want to unravel us. And so every intersection that we can find is creating another weave, right? It's like another stroke on the loom that's going to weave us back together. So it's so important for us to continuously find those intersections. And then through that, we're going to have these emergent species that pop up to the top, which creates the new cultural paradigm. And through that, finally, we come into the mycelium, which is this beautiful interconnected humanity that is going to be present on planet Earth. And that's what we can all look forward to. And my favorite words in Spanish is ojalá, which means if God or Goddess wills it. So these are just a few resources. There are so many resources out there. So the Permaculture Action Network, they're based out of Oakland. They really focus on a lot of urban permaculture, social permaculture, and direct action. Pandora Thomas is a Black woman that's also teaching social permaculture. She's in Oakland. Yukayeki Farms is my friend Brendan Ruiz. He teaches Puerto Rican medicine. And then another good friend of mine down here is Santiago Moringa, and he is a part of the Urban Permaculture Network in Costa Rica, and he's a really, really good friend and colleague of mine. So I want to just say thank you, and I would love to open up for any questions that you may have. I saw there were so many comments in there. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share. Wow, teaching in a half an hour is like
It is. It's trying to jam
hour through it.
years of knowledge in a 30-minute presentation.
Yeah.
But I appreciate this. I wanted to first say thank you. Being a new farmer, being someone who recently purchased land. So I recently purchased 87 acres of land out here in Georgia with the hopes of turning my land into a herbal farm and eco retreat space. And so I am growing out here. And permaculture has been something that I've always been interested in, especially because it is an indigenous practice. So many people don't know that. They think permaculture, it's trendy, it's hip, but the term permaculture was coined in like the 70s by like two Australian men. But people don't know is that this is a colonized practice that was taken from our ancestors. The term of using the land in order to grow, our ancestors have used this for centuries. They've paid attention to the land, the slopes, the topography, the animals, literally everything to tell them how to plant, how to grow, how to live. And that's the basis of what permaculture is. And so it's a lot to get into myself. I have permaculture books, but I literally have not dove into them yet. But I've almost wanted to just come and let you teach me, come to one of your, your courses out there. But just know, anyone here, if you're interested in growing, food and farming the ways of your ancestors, definitely tap into permaculture. Our ancestors have tended this land for thousands of years before we got here, and they did it, and it was working for them before we came over here and messed everything.
Exactly. And what I think is really interesting is permaculture just gives us modern language. I think it helps us to like articulate what we've been learning and look at things from a new perspective, because we've done so much damage, and we've done so much damage that it's giving us a tool to try to remediate that and to regenerate the damage that's been caused, so yeah, thank you for saying that. And there's a lot of critique in the permaculture community because of the dominant paradigm has been very prevalent, and that is starting to be unwoven and rewoven into something else.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I will say, when I tap into permaculture communities, a lot of people don't look like me. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate, you recognizing that and, being in this space and even teaching as well. And you spreading the knowledge on the decolonization piece and letting people know that it is an indigenous practice. So I appreciate that. And if anyone, Sara offers permaculture courses in Costa Rica, hands-on courses when it comes to permaculture and learning how to grow and how to tend to the land the ways of our ancestors. We're going to drop her links one more time in the chat. We're going to share her links again. We dropped them, but it just goes super fast and you all missed it.
Yeah, and for people too, I noticed that some of you were requesting the presentation, and thank you so much. I really had fun putting that together, and I just want to acknowledge that I learned that from a group called Permaqueer, just in how to apply succession of the forest to our social structures. So I just took it and I applied it to the wellness industry and what's been happening. And I believe Abril said that we're going to be offering the presentation to the VIP folks.
Yeah. Right. So anyone who has given me a presentation, if you have a VIP package, you will be getting the VIP presentations as well, downloadable presentations to download. So
yeah, and I just put it into the chat too. So for any of you who want to want to grab that, you can get it. And there's going to be so much great things, especially so you can go back and like reread and everything.
Upgrade, that's what she put in the chat. The chat is a link to upgrade to the VIP. It's only $20 more, lifetime access, extended VIP sessions, because I will be offering them the whole week for everyone because of the VIP snafu, VIP networking, and an abundance of resources. So we'll go ahead and answer some questions that we have here in the chat. We have about 9 or so minutes.
Perfect.
First question is, will the succession of forests, we just answered that. All right, we just answered that. Okay, it's all about the picture.
Now, where do I find the questions here?
There's a Q&A box, and you can, if
Oh,
you
there.
want to and pick them out. I've just been reading them off to speakers, but whatever way works best for you.
Any book recommendations? So specifically on permaculture, is that what we're asking for, book recommendations?
So your questions, if you scroll all the way down.
Yeah, I'm looking. So we have anonymous asked for any book recommendations. Book, oh gosh, there's so many. There was one that was just put out by Chelsea Green, who's one of the, which would be appropriate for the conference. Hold on one second, let me find it for you. There's a lot of books. Again, so many of them are written by the dominant group. So I do also, though, really love the work of Starhawk. But let me see, there is a book written by Chelsea Green. I'll find it for you. Let me look and I'll get back to you. Are there any more questions perhaps from the audience?
That is all of the questions we have on permaculture. The rest were for the previous sessions. Do you have any questions on permaculture at all? If you do, put them in the chat.
Farming While Black. That's it. Thank you so much, Jen.
That's
what I was looking for. Yeah.
I have that book right over there. I'm like, no, do I see it so I can go grab it? I don't know if I see it, if it's within reach, but that's an amazing book by Leah. She's an amazing person who also adopts permaculture techniques as well. And she does some amazing things. Her Instagram is amazing. I actually met her in person at one of the conferences. My conference staff, I love this person. He went and grabbed the book for me. So we have Farming While Black here. It's by Soulfire Farm by Leah Penniman. So a great book if you are any person of color and you're looking to get back to your roots and farm in the ways of your ancestors. A great book.
Yeah, I also really recommend checking out the Permaculture Action Network. The Permaculture Action Network, they put out a lot of resources for farms, projects, etc. And then there's another book called The One Straw Revolution. And this was written by, it was written in like the 1920s, I believe. And this was Fukuoka. And so a Japanese man was writing about no-till farming practices, ways to also care for the soil. And then I really also recommend people checking out Brandon Ruiz with the Yukiyeke Farms. Like, he puts out so much amazing content also on farming. He's an herbalist as well and an urban gardener, and he's just absolutely wonderful in all of his content. We've worked together a lot. He was a student of mine at one point also. Brandon Ruiz is the name, the people who are asking. Some people were asking about the name of the last book, Brandon Ruiz, R-U-I-Z. The name of the last book is called The One Straw Revolution, and that is by Masanobu Fukuoka. But you just want to look up The One Straw Revolution and you'll find that there.
There's another question. Would you recommend any small practices with permaculture that small gardeners can adopt right now if they're just scale?
Yeah, for sure. Well, one of the biggest things I would look into is what's called companion planting, right? And so some of the foundations of permaculture is the polyculture system, or sometimes what we also call gilding. Gilding is usually a polyculture system that's applied around a tree. specifically a fruit tree, because we are trying to mimic the forest but grow food from the forest model, but polyculture planting, or what's called companion planting. And so some of the basics, one of the most classic famous ones I'm sure you've heard of is the Three Sisters, which is the corn, rice, and beans, or in a lot of the farming in Latin America, we also call it the milpa, which is taking the Three Sisters and expanding it with things like hot peppers and bananas and yucca. So, look that up for your, like, what you're growing and who's going to grow well, because then what you're doing is you're creating a dynamic balance in your soil and aerial parts too. And also, bringing in things like pollinators. Yeah, companion planting is a strong part of permaculture, because what we're doing is in permaculture, the forest is the model, right? And we know that forests aren't in every ecosystem. So it's a metaphor, and it's thinking about different layers as well, the layers above and the layers below the soil. Because everything that we see above, we also have to consider the health of what is underneath, that is in the unseen.
Thank you. And the last question, can you talk about your course offerings and your retreat offerings? We put them in the chat, but it goes so fast.
Sure. Thank you so much. So one of my big courses that I do every year, it's called Permaculture for the Herbalist's Path. And it is a 200-hour program. And in that, we are training herbalists pretty much from soul to soil, like really trying to see how humans are an extension of the planet and how we can learn from these ecosystems and apply them to our human well-being. And so, for example, when we're learning about the forest, we're learning about the bronchiopulmonary system. When we're learning about water systems, we're learning about the kidneys. And then we're looking at a pretty global materia medica, because I am so fortunate to have students who do come from many different places. So, we'll talk about plants that are from the Americas, many, of course, lots of continental space there, talking about that, plants from the Middle East, plants from Asia, plants from all over. So we're pulling a few from every place through materia medica for each one of the different body systems. And it's a beautiful course because it's also in Guatemala. And my co-teacher, Lala Palmieri, she's from Guatemala City, and just a really amazing human being, and on the ground right now for some of the protests that are happening, practicing herbal medicine also. So yeah, and we go to a lot of different really cool projects as well, of indigenous permaculture projects, midwife projects, as well as doing like natural dyeing and all kinds of medicine making and fun things.
For your course, people are staying with you as well. Someone asked in the chat, are you there? Are you staying there? Is accommodation?
Yeah, it's live and in person. And so it's a 200-hour, one month course. And that's going to be next October. So in Guatemala. And then I also welcome people to my home in Costa Rica. And we do that's for the herbal medicine making. And that's just all aspects. We do everything from like teas and tinctures to smokes to body care to gummies to mushroom extracts to elixirs to all kinds of fun things. And it's just 12 days of hands-on. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Sara, for sharing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for, again, coming and answering the call and speaking on your passion. We appreciate you. We appreciate your knowledge on permaculture. Right on time. So again, Sara, we're going to go ahead and transition. You all show some love to Sara before she leaves. Drop in the chat. Sara, can you give us your favorite color?
Oh, today, tangerine.
Drop in the chat some tangerine or orange hearts.
There we go.
Sara. Drop in the chat some orange hearts to show love and show gratitude for her segment. That's for you, Sara. All of that is.
Look at that. Beautiful. Oh, thank you. And enjoy your next talk, everyone. Thank you so much, Abril.
Thank you so much.
And welcome, Naya. Ciao. Bye-bye.
Welcome.